I'm Jason. I'm going to show you exactly how we prep for our plaster. So for the first step of it is actually masking. So what we're going to do now is go through and mask off the entire floor to protect it from our primer, our plaster, everything. It's basically our base layer for prepping, for masking, all that. Now that my base layer, my floor is masked off, I'll go through and I'll mask off my base, my vanity. I'll do paper here. I'll do plastic on this thing and kind of attach it to my floor paper. So with our baseboard, if we put our paper down, we want to push that in there. That way, if we accidentally step on it, we don't rip it off, we don't tear it. We don't have to replace it. So the reason why I'm putting it kind of on the face of this baseboard, because obviously we're at about less of an inch. On here, we're going to have another piece of tape that comes on here. And through each one of our coats, we'll take that off, put a new one on there. So from our base coat, which is our primer, then our heritage coat, we'll peel that tape every time. So we're just gonna go to the face of it. And that's it with our masking paper. So now what we're doing right here is doing our first tear strip for our primer and for our base coat. So with these, you wanna hold it back 1/8 of an inch, right about there. We're going to do that on every surface these walls touch. Now what we're going to do is mask off this beam, portion of this lid. So in here, just so I get a nice straight edge in there. Will translate to a nice straight edge on a plaster. I usually just try to use the kind of blade I have, kind of get it in there. So if you see anything from the mudders, if they got anything on it here, you're going to want to clean that kind of stuff off, because we don't want to bury it in plaster, and we want a nice clean line with our plaster. So any kind of stuff that you see like this, we're going to want to clean that off. Kind of always want to get any surface you think you might get anything on that you do not want to scrub off, because obviously it's really hard to get it off this kind of wood, especially. We're going to leave 1/8 of an inch because that's exactly where our plaster is going to, because it actually builds out. So we always want to leave it just a little bit off the wall. That way we don't plaster over our tape. So right now I'm going to dust the wall to kind of get the dust off of there. That way our primer adheres to the wall a whole lot better. It adheres to the mud a whole lot better. You don't want a bunch of contaminants in your primer to begin with. So after we get everything masked, we want to make sure that we vacuum the floor, the baseboard, the cabinets, any place where the dust might sit, just to make sure there isn't any dust that could mess up the adhesion when applying our primer or our plaster. So right now we're going to be taking some primer, putting some of our primary aggregate into it. So per gallon of primer, you're going to want about 20 ounces of our primary mixed in there really well. So there's about 20 ounces. One thing you got to do with our primary and the primer is always, before you use it, always remix it every single time, because that stuff really likes to settle. The primary aggregate mixed into the PVA primer adds teeth into the wall for a heritage blend to grab onto. Two coats of primer need to go over all outside corners to give it an extra layer of teeth for the heritage to grab onto the exposed edge. Once it's dry, as you can see, this is wet right here. Once it starts to dry, because primer's flat, you'll be able to see it just like in that little cut line right there. It's completely flat. Then it's ready to plaster. As soon as it cures out, it's dry. You can almost probably get this in about an hour. Put a base coat on it. We use white tape, kind of the harder to stick surfaces, kind of like this old corral board that we got sitting up here, or these beams. But mainly, we use blue tape on any kind of finished surface that I don't want the adhesive from the yellow tape sticking to. So that's why I use blue on any finished surface. Just like cabinets, whether it's the floor, tile, I'll use blue tape for all that stuff. Just so I don't have to clean up the adhesive later. It's just a really good practice.